So before we dive in, some quick admin items. First, especially if you're out in Zoom land, mute your microphones while you're listening. Send your questions in chat. We do have somebody in the room who's monitoring that, or you can raise your virtual hand and we'll call on you when we get to the Q&A. Please do wait to be called on by a host before you go off of mute. And then as you give your question, feel free to turn your camera on and let us know who you are. We always like to know who's joining us, especially if you're new to the forum. Second, a moment of silence, if we can, just to, as always, honor our comrades who can't join us today because they're deployed either in military service or as members of other uniformed services, keeping us all safe and healthy. Okay, thank you. Next, a warm welcome to some of our special Maryland State partners who have been invited today. If you're here, thanks to our relationship with Warrior K-9, of course, the Mid-Atlantic Veteran Business Outreach Center, Service to Schools, our alliance of veterans affiliated with Big Ten Business Schools, Stars and Stripes, 4 Block, or 50 Strong. We are thrilled to have you. Thanks for joining. Next, some context for these events. Our Lifelong Leaders Forum are part of Maryland Smith's broader initiative for veteran lifelong leadership, through which we promote veterans as strategic assets for a united economy. Please reach out to me if you'd like to learn more. There will actually be a QR code at the end of this presentation. He wants to know more, it sounds like. But anyway, we'd happy to talk to you about any of our missions, platforms, or partners. Now to the forum itself. We hold this forum roughly once a year to explore together the role of lifelong leaders in our evolving nation and economy. And we do that by asking our featured speakers questions about what they've learned from leadership from various experiences. And today we're excited to have folks to actually talk about some cross-species leadership lessons learned, right? Specifically, Mar Leffield and Suzanne Brown from Warrior K-9 Connection. Mar has been working with service animals as a volunteer and later professional capacity for nearly 20 years. Their passion for working with service dogs began in 2004 when their sister received her first service dog, specially trained to mitigate the effects of her disability. Mar returned to that organization as a volunteer puppy raiser and will go on to work with dozens of young service dogs in training throughout their young adult life and into college. After receiving their Bachelor's of Arts in Communications in 2015, Mar went on to work with service animals professionally for an organization that specializes in training mobility dogs for individuals with wide-ranging physical disabilities. That organization happens to be Warrior K-9 Connection, where Mar serves now as the Assistant Director of Mission-Based Trauma Recovery and works to enlist the assistance of veterans, active duty service members, and their families in training service dogs for fellow wounded warriors. Mar oversees the delivery of mission-based trauma recovery training in 5 states across the U.S., including California, Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. And joining Mar is Suzanne. Suzanne served for over 25 years on active duty after graduating from the U.S. Coast Guard Academy in 1995 with a Bachelor's of Science degree in Naval Architecture and Marine Engineering. She earned a Master's of Science degrees from University of Michigan in Naval Architecture and Marine Engineering and Aerospace Engineering. Her professional engineer license in mechanical engineering and was certified as an Incident Command Systems Level 3 Logistics Section Chief. Mouthful. Throughout her diverse Coast Guard career, she specialized in afloat, shoreside engineering, operational logistics, project management, personnel management. But since retiring from the Coast Guard as a captain, Suzanne has been working at Warrior K-9 Connection as a service dog training instructor with a focus on working with veterans through Warrior K-9 Connection's mission-based trauma recovery program. So Suzanne and Mar, over to you. And who else is with us?
Oh, we have Holly.
Okay, and Holly.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here, those here in person and on Zoom. We're really excited to work with you today. Why don't I hand it? Yeah, I'll put this one down for a moment. As was stated, we're here to talk about an interesting layer of how leadership skills can be found through the training of service dogs. At Warrior Canine Connection, we have a mission that is twofold in nature. So we're a nonprofit organization that provides service dogs to veterans at no cost to them. Those service dogs are specifically trained to help mitigate the symptoms of PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and other mobility-related disabilities. They're trained in over 60 various different tasks and commands. And the unique part about our program is that they learn that multitude of tasks and commands through what is called our mission-based trauma recovery program that Frank mentioned before. So that mission-based trauma recovery program, also sometimes known as MBTR, is a unique program where we enlist the assistance of veterans, active duty service members, and then also military family members in the training of the dogs. So that way, when one of our dogs gets placed with someone as a working service animal, they haven't just had the opportunity to touch the life of that one veteran that they get paired with as a service dog, but rather they were able to work with dozens of other members of the military community in varying capacities through that MBTR program. A little bit more on that program. So oftentimes the folks who are engaging in our MBTR program might also be folks who are dealing with PTSD symptomology. Maybe they have a traumatic brain injury or a mobility-related disability. So we find that it can be very beneficial for those individuals to be engaging with the dogs in a volunteer capacity where they're training them to help them, with some of those invisible or visible wounds that they're struggling with. We've learned through various research programs related to this program that the symptoms of those visible and invisible wounds, we can see some mitigation from them. We do frequent assessments with folks engaging in this program to kind of do a temperature check of maybe how they're feeling in regards to their mood, stress levels, emotional regulation, things like that prior to working with one of our dogs. And then at the end of the session, kind of circle back, take that temperature check again. And most often we do see a pretty significant reduction in the difficulties that folks are struggling with related to those key points. We focus very heavily on, the military ethos, or otherwise known as the warrior ethos here, of recognizing this as a no-fail mission. We will not accept defeat in this situation and are going to ensure success regardless of the ultimate outcome. We'll make sure that we have a successful training session with these dogs here and a successful session where that veteran, service member or family member is able to feel fulfilled with their training that they're doing with this dog. Some of the positive benefits that folks can experience through this is improved communication, emotional regulation, sense of purpose, patience. All of those things are things that we heavily focus on in dog training, right? They have a pretty heavy place in regards to training a service animal, but they're all things that significantly impact someone's interpersonal communication and maybe how they handle connection in a professional capacity as well. Just kind of more where we get into that aspect of how service dog training skills can work into enhancing our leadership skills. So when we like to talk about this, we like to consider going back to the basics. Now, you'll notice that it's written out more as an acronym here. We're kind of referencing basics in a couple of different capacities here. So in the literal sense, we want to go back to our basic understanding of communication and with dogs and with people to ensure a successful outcome. But also we work through the basics in an acronym capacity to kind of break it down a little bit more in depth and ensure that we're hitting key points to be able to have a successful partnership with the dog we're training with or beyond with the individual that we're working with, whether it be in an employment capacity, working as a team in a school setting, things like that. So when we consider the basics of dog training, we want to first focus on bonding. Now, when I reference bonding in this capacity, I'm referring to building a quick rapport. So when someone comes in and they're working with one of these dogs for the first time, maybe it's a dog that they don't know at all, They need to be able to build a little bit of a relationship with that dog in a pretty quick period of time. If they're going to spend the next hour training with them, working with them on complex skills, the dog's going to need to have an understanding as to why they should listen to this individual. So we utilize various forms of engagement, whether that be through play, petting, social interaction, or most importantly for a lab, food, to be able to build a positive association and that nice quick rapport in that setting so that we can have a good, successful working relationship. We then want to consider anticipation. So through our bond that's been built, we have the opportunity to then know the strengths and weaknesses of the pup that we're working with. And so we're able to anticipate what challenges may come forth in an individual session, and we're going to be able to set up for success in that scenario and ensure a better outcome. We'll also focus then on our S, synchronization. So when we refer to synchronization, we're talking about modeling in both a physical and emotional capacity the result that we would like to see. So for example, modeling a positive work ethic, working with a team. If you want to see that good, strong, positive work ethic, you want to also have that yourself as a leader in order to be able to model that behavior for your team and hopefully see them follow in suit. And we'll have some fun practices for examples of that with Holly in a little bit here. And then also we get to instructing and our coaching. So when we refer to those, we're talking about the way we deliver information and then the way we also continue to give feedback about that information. So it's very important in the dog training sense for us to really consider our command tone. How are we saying something to a dog? Is our instruction clear? We want to avoid things like repeating commands, making it kind of convoluted and confusing for the dog because they're getting too much information rather than that clear, concise direction you want to give them. Sounds pretty similar to the way that a lot of people receive communication as well. We don't want to be too redundant, repetitive, and create confusion with a lot of added fluff to our words. We want everything to be nice and clear and concise. And then continuing on with that coaching, we want to make sure we're giving consistent feedback. That feedback is nice and positive, but also, with a sense of accountability as well, right? We might have to have times where that feedback is not just positively based, but it's going to still be clear and effective and not drudging into a territory of being reactive in nature or in anything like that. Then ultimately, we'll move on to our S in the basics, which would be satisfaction with this outcome. So if we really focus on these key points here and follow them through to fruition, then we will, at the end of the day, always lead to a successful outcome, which will ultimately leave the individual, the dog, the whole team, whatever it may be, feeling satisfied with a successful job done and a successful experience in that training session or whatever else it may be. So now it's going to get a little more fun here. So I'm going to kind of talk more about how these things will relate to working with individuals and the dogs. And we're going to give some great examples here of how we can utilize these skills in a structured capacity through the training of a service animal. So when we talk about that bond, we really want to consider, is it worth the time and effort to build that positive relationship? Absolutely. No one's going to want to look to you in a leadership capacity if they don't have confidence in you as a leader, right? So we want to be able to build that bond, build that rapport, connect on common ground, find opportunities to have those bridges built so that we can go on and be a more successful leader to individuals. In the case of the dog training, Suzanne and Holly are in a unique situation here where they actually already have a pretty significant bond built. So Suzanne and Holly are actually a working service dog team. So Suzanne wears multiple hats with our organization. She works as one of our service dog training instructors, but her journey actually began with us in a volunteer capacity as a veteran engaging in our MBTR program. When Holly was just a young pup, probably about 6 months old, the first time you guys worked together, Suzanne and Holly got the chance to start training together. And at that point in time, Suzanne had to work to build that trust with Holly and be able to establish that bond. Now, at this point in their relationship, they have been a paired service dog team for 3 years. And so that bond is really nice and strong, and we can know that and have confidence in it. So with having that bond, we have the opportunity to be able to challenge things a little bit, right? We can introduce distractions and difficulties to the scenario, and we know that we're still going to have a successful outcome because that bond exists. So I'm going to do a little demo here with Suzanne and Holly. So as you can see, Suzanne's worked on connecting with Holly in this moment, right? There's a lot already going on in the room. There's some other dogs, there's people around. There's reasons for Holly to be distracted, but because of that wonderful bond that they've built, Holly is predominantly focused on Suzanne despite that. I'm gonna kind of up the ante a little bit here. Yeah, add some toy distraction into the mix. And you see that Holly, of course, noticed that, right? You know, she's not going to be totally blind to what's going on in her environment, nor do we want her to not be aware of what's going on in her environment. But the key thing to take away here is that despite the distraction, she notices it and then she quickly returns to check in with Suzanne. Because through that bond build, Suzanne has established herself as a successful leader to Holly, and Holly's going to continue to return to Suzanne in her focus to get that feedback and ensure that she's staying on the right track. This can absolutely pertain to how we work with human individuals, right? By having that bond built, by building a sense of trust, you know, we're able to challenge our teams, work with them, and be able to have them hopefully look back to us when they need a little bit of additional guidance. Even in the face of adversity, challenges, whatever those distractions might be, we're going to have those folks check back in to be able to get that ongoing feedback, and we can continue on and be successful as a team. So moving on from that, again, since we've established our bond, we know our team, in this case, we know our dog and what challenges they might struggle with, we're able to then anticipate what challenges could arise in a certain environment, could arise in a certain situation. With that anticipation, we're able to then set up for success by putting in other elements that can help things along a little bit, right? So what we're gonna do here with Holly is actually a little bit of audience participation here. So something that Suzanne and I are well aware that Holly struggles with is being a little bit solicitous with other folks. So she loves to make friends. It was a big part of her training when she was a pup. She was out and about in a lot of different environments, engaging with many, many service members. She did a ton of work over at Walter Reed, lots of different people to hang out with there. So that's been something that Holly has continued to need to work on throughout her relationship with Suzanne. But because we know that that's something that she struggles with, we're able to anticipate that challenge and do things that are going to help her be successful. All right, so I'm going to need 2 people from the audience here, if anybody wants to come up and get a chance to pet a dog. All right, we got right here. Anybody else want to come up? Come on over. Yeah, you can come on over here. And so we know that Holly has the challenge of wanting to solicit attention from other people from time to time, right? So we have anticipated that challenge, and Suzanne's worked heavily with her on her say hello command. What that command does is it gives Holly the opportunity to go and greet while maintaining focus on her handler. So Suzanne, you want to come over here and go ahead and display how that can play out here, and you guys can just pet her when she approaches. So we see, despite the fact that this is something that Holly has a significant draw towards, it's something that makes her very happy, excited, her tail's wagging, her ears pricked up. She was really ready to greet these people. But you notice as she goes over for her greeting, she quickly then returns to Suzanne for that feedback because Suzanne has worked very hard on anticipating these challenges in her environment with Holly and making sure that we can follow through with successful training sessions here. We'll get one more in. Good job, Hal. Nice. Right, thank you guys very much. So this of course can relate to how we interact with individuals in working capacity and a team capacity. We want to anticipate what those strengths and weaknesses are and make sure that we are setting the folks that we're working with up for success in those scenarios where they might run into challenges that we're aware of are things that are of more significant challenge to them. So moving on to that piece of synchronization, as I said, synchronization is really a lot about being a good model for what you would like to see in your dog or in your team. So what Suzanne's going to do with Holly real quick is display, maybe we'll do settling first since she's up. Display how Suzanne can utilize her verbal communication as well as her body language to encourage Holly to then model that behavior back and actually kind of synchronize with Suzanne's energy. So you notice when she was greeting, right, when she was given that say hello command, she was really wiggly, she was really excited. We were also all a little bit more excited. The energy in the room kind of picked up a bit, right? That's to be expected, and that's what we want in that scenario. But in this setting, we're kind of wanting her to just be a little bit more chill. Good girl. We can use verbal commands such as the down that Suzanne just provided, where she kind of drew out her voice a little bit, modeled in command tone that we want her nice and settled. And then on the flip side, we can do things that will encourage a little bit more excitable engagement.
Are you ready?
So Suzanne's now giving Holly her "Are you ready" command, which we've associated with movement. We've associated with action. That "Are you ready" command means, okay, we're about to do something. So I'm going to say, "Are you ready" to you? And now you're going to get ready to work. And then we can also apply this to some physical movement. So what Suzanne's going to do with Holly now is practice some pace changes. So you can go ahead and start walking if you would like. So what she's doing is she's utilizing her voice and the way she's moving her body to communicate to Holly that she wants her to go faster. She wants this to be a quick movement. This is very, very helpful to have the dog synchronized in this capacity for their public access training. Veterans rushing through an airport trying to catch a flight. They don't want their service dog dragging along behind. We also want to be able to just use our voice and our body language to have success with that. We can slow it down a little bit here. And so when Suzanne then slows her movements down, goes to a slower pace, communicates with her voice that we should settle back down here, we're going to see that then reflected in Holly. But I also want to mention that this aspect of synchronization is only possible, again, because we've already built those blocks with our bonding, with our anticipation of challenges. All of these things are building on one another to ensure success as we continue to move along through this process. Synchronization, of course, then will wonderfully apply to how we work with individuals. You want to have a strong work ethic in your team, as I mentioned before, you got to show that strong work ethic yourself. If we want positivity in, our leadership relationships, we want to communicate positivity ourselves in the way that we carry ourselves, the way we regulate our emotions, and the way we communicate to those individuals. Same sense if we need things to be a little bit more serious in nature, right? Maybe kind of bring the energy down in a situation. That's also something that we're able to model with ourselves as an individual to be able to hopefully ensure success with that with the rest of our team and the folks that we are working with. So then moving on to that instructing and coaching piece, again, we want to make sure that we are giving clear and concise feedback and direction. So it's going to be very important that our command tone is going to reflect what it is we would like the dog to understand here, and that our energy, again going back to synchronization, is going to reflect what we'd like the dog to accomplish here, and that we're giving all of that instruction and coaching in a clear and consistent manner. So what we're going to do for Holly here now is set up once again, a nice distraction. I mentioned before that labs, one of the most significant challenges for them is food. You can see she definitely noticed that I just picked this up. I don't know how many of you have dogs at home, but this is gold. So these are the nice stinky meaty treats. It's not the boring kibble that they eat for breakfast and dinner. It's definitely a lot higher value in terms of a dog's mind and eyes. And so she's gonna have increased interest in this. What Suzanne's going to do is she's going to utilize a command that's called don't. Open it up. All right, we're really going for it. She's going to utilize a command that's called don't. And now I want to specify that don't is not a corrective command, so to speak, right? So we're not saying don't in an angry or reactive capacity, but rather we're utilizing it as another means to give clear instruction because we've anticipated a challenge. So as Suzanne is approaching this bag of very, very yummy smelling treats, she's going to give Holly the feedback of that don't command, which essentially means don't even think about it. I want you to ignore that bag of food and return your focus to me. You can start moving about if you want here.
Well,
Holly says, I know a setup when I smell one. We'll challenge her a little bit here. Move closer. Practice some basic skills. Really up that Andy. She's like, don't make me sit near it. Girl.
Good job.
She's a little further back for that, she said. But ultimately, that's a good thing, right? Holly has practiced these things with Suzanne. Suzanne has laid an expectation out for her. And even in these times where she's being apparently a little bit avoidant, she's just being a good dog. She knows what Suzanne's expectation is of her. And so Suzanne's going to continue to provide her with that nice feedback, with a little extra coaching to help her be successful. So what Suzanne's doing now is giving Holly a physical target. So when these dogs are young pups, we teach them their physical command positions like sitting down by luring them with a treat. And then over time, we work towards verbal responsiveness. But if the dog is uniquely struggling with something, we can always go back to those earlier stages where we were providing those physical cues, where we were providing a little bit of extra instruction for them in order to make sure she's successful. So through having consistent communication on this, through having practiced this multiple times, Holly is now able to be successful with something that we know is a very, very significant challenge for her. And she's going to continue to operate appropriately despite the fact that those snacks are now.
Good job. Yes, you're a very good girl.
This, of course, can apply to working with individuals, making sure that we are providing them with instructions that are clear, providing them with instructions that are going to ultimately work towards our primary goal of success. And then that we're going to be able to be an adaptable leader. She said, where'd they go? We want to be an adaptable leader who can take those challenges that may arise and be able to adjust the situation to help our teammates out and ensure that ultimate success. We're also going to demonstrate an additional form of coaching here with a more.
I didn't get to use the don't.
You didn't get to use it because she just did it.
Good. So can we try something?
Yeah, try something a little harder. All right, let's get a dog up. Yeah. So Suzanne would like to challenge Holly a little bit more here because she didn't actually even get to say that don't phrase because Holly was so keyed up to making the right choice already. So we're gonna go ahead and try that one more time here with a little bit tougher of a distraction. This is one of her good buddies, Jelaine.
Good girl.
Perfect. So there was a brief moment there where Holly kind of hesitated. She was thinking about making that choice to go check Jelaine out. Suzanne gave her the clear feedback of that don't command. And now Holly is very successful. Oh, there it is. Just trying to sneak a sniff in there. And then Suzanne changed her terminology a little bit, right? I don't know if anyone noticed, but she went from saying don't to then giving her a leave it command. Leave it means stop doing what you're doing in this moment. So if we do have a situation where maybe we're a little unsuccessful for a period of time, we just need to be clear with that communication. We need to hold our dogs and our teammates accountable to make sure that they understand that expectation even more for the next time around. Awesome. Gonna give it one more pass here, and Holly Bear is gonna be perfect because she got that good feedback. Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Molly.
Yeah.
So then the other way that we are going to kind of demonstrate this depiction of instructing and coaching here is with one of our commands that's a little bit more complex. It's called the close command. The dogs need to kind of tuck themselves into a space between their handler's legs. I don't know if any of you have large breed dogs at home, but they have pretty poor hind end awareness, generally speaking. They bump into things a lot, and we have to kind of teach them how to lead with their back feet in situations where they are required to tuck into a position. So it takes a lot of effort there. And the command that Suzanne's going to be focusing on utilizing for coaching here today is our "that's it" command. When I say "that's it," I like to frame it in the sense of thinking of it as kind of you've given the command by, and starting the ignition of the car there, and then when we're giving the "that's it," it's more like just giving some gas, giving a little bit of motivation there, communicating to the dog that they're on the right track, but they haven't fully completed that task yet. So we'll go ahead and give that close command a go with Miss Holly here.
Oops.
So if you could see, Holly started getting into that position, but she needed a little bit of guidance. She needed a little bit of guidance, both in the sense of that physical cue that Suzanne briefly utilized earlier with the down, and then also with the "that's it." As Holly started to really tuck into position there, Suzanne quickly came in at the appropriate time when Holly needed that extra feedback to say, that's it, you got it, to ultimately ensure success. Now, Holly's tucking into that position a lot more smoothly, right? That first go around, she needed the physical cue. Now, as Suzanne continues to practice it, we're seeing a little bit more success with Holly doing that on the verbal responsiveness. So close.
That's it.
There she is. Oh, Holly was So once again, we refer back to how we can utilize these skills in working with individuals, giving that nice clear direction and giving that consistent feedback throughout. You're doing a good job. You're on the right track. Or maybe you're not on the right track and we need to, reframe where we're headed here. Either way, that coaching is what's ultimately going to communicate the clearest expectation and ultimately going to lead to a successful outcome. So satisfaction is our final note here in the acronym, our S, so to speak. And satisfaction is really just accumulation of all of these things brought together by following those building blocks with focusing on bonding, anticipating what challenges we might have, and being able to continue to move along through those basics, we're ultimately going to lead to a successful and satisfactory outcome. As it pertains to dog training, we're working with both living, breathing people who have variations in their personalities, variations in how they might be feeling on one day versus the next. And we're also working with dogs who have those same effects in their lives, right? They have good days, they have bad days, they have moments where they might need a little bit of extra assistance. However, if we stay focused on these things, then we're able to ensure that we always have at least small moments of success in each training session to ultimately be able to leave both the dog and the individual feeling a greater sense of pride, purpose, in all of the things that they are working on together as a team. Any questions? Yeah.
Is
And
there a time where the dog is allowed to play with the ball? Is there a time when the dog is allowed to play with the ball?
so, yes and no. There is a time when the dogs are allowed to play, absolutely. But generally speaking, we avoid the use of tennis balls because we try not to play fetch with them. Labs have a pretty significant inclination to chase things that are moving. So we try to mitigate that natural inclination and instinct there by avoiding games of fetch so that we're not encouraging that chase behavior. We do allow them to play with a wide variety of toys. She gets lots of time to be on release and things like that. But generally speaking, we don't usually use a ball specifically.
So I'm letting her play with the ball for a second, but she doesn't really know what to do with it.
Yeah. She's like, oh, okay, well.
Okay.
But it's interesting though, because despite the fact that she doesn't really know what to do with it, she was still interested in it, right? She was still excited by it. And that's kind of more why we don't really trudge into that territory too much with these guys while they're in training. Because we don't want to build on that instinct.
So are the dogs allowed to play with each other? Like, but do the handlers, are they there or do you have to kind of go inside so they're not looking at you for direction? Like, are they allowed to just be dogs?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So, yes, they are allowed to be dogs. We are careful about who they play with because, they're also working dogs. We want them to not get hurt, injured or get startled or, anything like that. So we're always careful. We do a dog introduction, before we allow them to just go play on their own.
Generally, they'll be supervised unless they've been it's tried and true and tested that they get along with that dog and can go and be peaceful playing. Because they are labs or Goldens, and they do, at least the dogs that we breed. And so they do often want to get excited. We keep them, their play needs to be calm, not jumping all over each other and mauling each other and all of that stuff. So we're careful about it, but yes, they can be dogs and play. Usually we take the vest off and take the leash off, so that they know, okay, it's time.
Any other questions? We wanna run it over here.
I'll let Holly do it.
Good girl.
So often it's said that you have to train the people that live with the dog as well as the dog. So how do you train the people who live in your house to not tempt the dog too many times or in other ways make this more difficult for the dog?
Oh, wait, tackle that one.
So I would say that really kind of goes back to making it clear to everyone in the household how important it is for the dog to have consistency to be fair to the dog, right? Although we might have certain members of our household that want to engage in the dog in a certain way, accept certain behaviors, but if you frame it in the sense of, if this is not our primary expectation for this dog all of the time, it's really unfair to give them that gray area, because then they're going to have times where the dog's doing something that they believe is encouraged, the dog's doing something that they've been positively reinforced for, and they're going to get in trouble for it from time to time. A nice example of that would be like furniture usage, right? I personally allow my pet dogs on the furniture, totally fine with it. They sleep in the bed, that's fine. My wife and I both are okay with that. But I know, since I allow my dogs to have that free furniture access, I can't get mad at them if they jump up on the furniture and they got dirty paws, right? And so communicating that layer of consistency, of making sure that, all the family members know, okay, well, if we're going to be okay with this, we have to be okay with this in all scenarios, because dogs don't really understand gray areas very well. They need it to be nice and clear and black and white, and that's how we can be a leader for our family members in communicating those needs, and then a good leader for our dog by giving them that consistent feedback. I think we had over here.
Thank you. So it's pretty clear that Suzanne and Holly have this wonderful bond that they've developed. So what happens when that bond isn't there with the service dogs? What are some of the ways that you can overcome those challenges? And I'm asking because sometimes as humans, we don't have a choice as to who we work with, and wondering if there's some parallels there.
Yeah, yeah. So when we have someone working with a dog for the very first time, we like to start with interactions that are going to be very positive for both the dog and the person. So we consider what is motivating to them, right? So with our dogs, a lot of them are predominantly motivated by food. Some of them may be a little bit more motivated by interaction styles, by getting a little silly with your voice and being all goofy and wiggly with them, engaging in petting. A lot of our dogs really enjoy being brushed and things like that. So we take the time to be able to figure out what our dog is predominantly motivated by, and then encourage that service member to engage the dog with that strongest motivator. So again, how that could pertain to people, you know, considering, all right, what is the key motivator for this individual? How can I make sure that I am incorporating that motivator into my interactions with them to be able to, you know, keep them engaged, build that relationship, and hopefully build a little bit of a sense of trust there.
Thanks. Second question.
Yeah.
How do I get my cat to listen?
I can help you with that one.
That is training the cat that's in the training center, so.
She's a unique cat.
Yes.
She is a very dog-like cat. We have a cat at our headquarters in Boyd's named Summer. She resides in our training center and has her bed and her litter box and food in me and Suzanne's office. And she's lovely and quite dog-like. I have 2 cats at home. I absolutely cannot control their behavior. Do we have any other questions?
So I was gonna ask, so if I feel like would the dogs like perceive emotional like state of emotion? Because like if you have a bad day
Mm-hmm.
and like you're just not feeling right, the dog will feel that. Then how would you like would that affect the dog and then you have to go around that or like figure that out?
Yeah, so that's actually a really, really wonderful question. So that kind of pertains back to our synchronization, right? A little bit there. However, what you're talking about with, you know, you as an individual having a tough day and concerns about that negatively impacting the dog, that's kind of really where that higher level training to actually be a service dog comes into play. So when we're working with them in a training capacity, when they're still young, we work very hard to fake it till we make it in terms of being those models of positivity and good behavior for them. However, as they continue to get older and they develop more emotional regulation themselves through the practice of those synchronization skills, we kind of start to have those scales tip a little bit and start teaching the dogs stress mitigation tactics where rather than them becoming stressed when their person that they're working with is having a bad day, they're actually trained to counteract that stress. And they serve as the model for good and positive behavior. So Suzanne's going to demonstrate a little bit here one of the stress cue alerts. So one of the things that Holly has been trained to do is notice those types of physical movements Suzanne was engaging in, fidgeting of the hands, legs, things like that. You notice how Holly very quickly keyed into her and looked at her. But in this situation, because Holly's training has moved to a point where, you know, she's not affected in a capacity where she's now going to become stressed because Suzanne's stressed, she knows, okay, I can see this, I can recognize this, and I can do something that's gonna help. And that's why she's coming up and she's trying to nudge Suzanne's legs, nudge her hands, get her attention. And now, rather than Suzanne being the model in that synchronization context, Holly is actually becoming the model for Suzanne in this moment, saying, hey, let's break out of that behavior. Let's check back into the room here, pay attention to our surroundings, know that we're here, we're a team, we're good, and we're okay. Anybody else?
Girl, Holly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other questions?
I don't.
Anyone online? Questions online?
I can do it from here. This might be kind of a dumb question, but while you're still like training a dog and it hasn't been replaced with a veteran yet, do they like live at the facility or do they like live with their trainer?
It's a great question. So the answer is a little bit twofold. We have different stages of training for the dogs. So when they are from 8 weeks of age to roughly about 18 months of age, they live with what we call volunteer puppy parents. So those puppy parents are responsible for housing the dogs, teaching them good house manners, crate training, public access training, things like that. And then when the dogs get older, when they're close to 2 years of age, they return back to our facility and they do reside there each night so that every single day they can engage in professional training with our trainers who work at our HQ. That process is known as advanced training, and it's really a heavy focus on refinement of the skills. So I referenced, with Holly, how those synchronization scales kind of tip when we start really pushing the dog towards that service dog career track. That's the time where we start really pushing the dog to be able to have those more refined skills and be able to be that good working service dog. That process usually takes about 3 months, and then the dogs are placed with their veteran when they're around 2 years old.
At your facility, do you also do things like, I know some people have dogs that can sense when someone's about to have a seizure, or sense a smell, like a smell that's gonna.
Yeah.
Do you do that kind of training there also, or is that a different kind of?
So we in particular haven't engaged in that type of training yet. Our alerts are, ones that are rooted in the dogs recognizing physical cues, physical things that they can see on an individual. That is a wonderful type of training there, but it's just not something that we've really approached so much ourselves. There is, however, some understanding that the dogs are likely starting to naturally equate two things together because despite the fact that we don't do scent work training, our dogs have a very good sense of smell. So if they are consistently working with their veteran and they're practicing those stress cue alerts where initially they're responding to a physical cue, a physical thing they can see in their veteran, they're going to also start naturally being able to know what that smell is when their veteran's in a heightened emotional state. They're going to naturally start picking up on those irregularities in heart rate and things like that. It's just not something that's a formal part of our training at this time.
Normally have enough dogs available for the demand of veterans that would like.
So we do have a lot of dogs in our program. However, we need to pick the best of the best of the best to actually be able to go on and be working service dogs. So not all of our dogs are actually going to get placed in that capacity. So generally speaking, unfortunately, we do have a wait list of about 2 years long for individuals, and that is pretty common across the industry with other service dog programs similar to us to kind of have that wait time. For that similar reason of, yes, we can have the dogs, we can produce the dogs, we can train the dogs, but ultimately, in order to place them as a working service dog, we need to ensure that it's going to be a good fit for the veteran, and we also need to ensure that the dog's going to live a good, happy, successful life. So if a dog is communicating to us in training that this is not for them, we're not going to force them into a miserable partnership where they are engaging in a work that isn't good for them, right? Because that's in turn going to negatively impact that veteran if the dog isn't enjoying the work that they're doing. In that case, we do have some other career paths we can send them to. So we have some partnerships with explosive detection programs, things like that, where maybe if a dog is a little bit higher drive, higher energy, and they would like a more rigorous job, we can transfer them over there. We also have some different categories within our program, such as facility dogs. So those are dogs that are kind of a step up from a therapy dog. They're assigned to a provider or a facility that serves the military community, and those dogs predominantly serve in a therapeutic capacity, just as being a pal for the service members being served in that environment. Then we also have military family support dogs. And those are dogs that are trained in the same tasks as our service dogs. They know all those stress mitigation techniques. They can pick up dropped items, all that good stuff. But those are dogs that maybe have shown us that they're a little less adaptable. So they wouldn't do well going into a variety of public spaces and serving as a support for a veteran in those environments. So we can have them paired with a military family. Could be a veteran family, active duty family, Gold Star family, and they serve as a support in an at-home companion capacity there.
Any last question? Great. Well, Lauren. Littles are gonna appreciate it.
Thank you.
I hope in addition to dogs, you like turtles. Always think of your- as well.
Thank you.
So, just to wrap things up, I guess I'll use the. So if you're interested in more about Warrior Canine Connection or contacting Mar or Suzanne, that is their contact information there. Not sure why. Oh, and I'll give you a minute to scan the QR code if you're interested. If this has inspired you to want to get involved in our Warrior Canine Connection Club, student club here at UMD, so it's a campus-wide student club that just started up this year. We welcome you to. There is an Instagram page that you can follow the club if you're just interested in following the activities. But if you're interested in joining, there's a GroupMe page that you can join, and that QR code will take you to the GroupMe page. So go ahead and sign up, and you'll get information about future club meetings and activities. We'd love to have you come out. These are just some pictures from this last year's activities. If this has inspired you to want to come to more activities from our Initiative for Veteran Lifelong Leadership, we welcome that as well. So we will post actually the recording from this event to our website, and future events are also posted to the website along with information about our partnerships. So you can follow that QR code or that URL to the webpage for our Initiative for Veteran Lifelong Leadership. And you do not have to be affiliated with Maryland or with an initiative partner. We like to say, if you're interested, you're welcome. And finally, I'd like to sign off today. Well, first, before I do this final sign off, if you are here personally, I'm sorry for those on Zoom, but we have found that dogs are not the only ones who are motivated by food. So there is pizza outside if you'd like to join us for dinner. There's also gluten-free options as well as vegan options. So hunt around if that applies to you. And we'd love to have you chat a little bit and maybe meet some of the dogs. And finally, all of our events, we like to sign off with a reminder of the Old Line legacy that we all share. It actually stems from the Battle of Brooklyn in August of 1776, when roughly, less than 400 Maryland citizen soldiers held off more than 2,000 British Army regulars from destroying the Continental Army and putting a very, very early halt to the revolution. George Washington was looking at the battle across the river as they allowed the Continental Army to retreat. Less than a dozen of the Marylanders actually exited the field, left the field uninjured. And he would later say, "Good God, you know, what good men I must lose today for the revolution." He would go on to use their story to motivate troops throughout the war. He would call him his Maryland Old Line, and that's actually the origin of the Maryland's motto, the Old Line State. But 19th century historian Thomas Field would later go on to say that it was an hour more precious to American liberty than any other. So thank you for sharing an hour of your time, a precious hour with us, and then join us for pizza.